Hello, everybody. I'm going to give a few minutes for folks to show up. I see um, Matt, Victor, thanks for joining us. Uma,
You can
Zachary.
probably mute.
We've got some folks still coming in here. So we're just going to take a minute to get everybody in the room here. And then I guess maybe it's probably worth it for just to do an introduction, just in case anybody's watching this recording later. And they're like, who's that? That is not indeed Sofar webinar, like it says under my name. I'm Zach. I'm Zach Johnson. There's two Zachs here, so that could be easy or hard depending. And I'm the community manager for Bristlemouth. So I'll be kind of first point of contact often on the forum, or if your inbox is full of orange title emails, that's my fault. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to kind of navigate you through the Bristlemouth space. We have a pretty exciting update for you guys. This is the first update in a while because we've been giving updates in other forums, such as webinars through Sofar and a couple of newsletters that have gone out. So we figured it was time to get a little FaceTime with everybody. I've brought two folks into the webinar today to kind of help us out. First, I'd like to introduce you to Zach, other Zach. There's two Zachs, Zach Crockett, who will be giving us a detailed overview of some of the work that he's been up to. And I'd also like to introduce you to Uma, who will be talking a little bit about multi-parameter sondes. Do you guys want to do a quick introduction while we're still maybe waiting for a few folks to show up?
Yeah, sure. I'm Zachary Crockett. I lead the firmware team at Sofar, and we spend a lot of our time driving forward the core internals of Bristlemouth firmware. Uma?
Hi, I'm Uma. I'm the embedded hardware engineer at Sofar Ocean, and yeah, I'm a part of the electrical engineering team, and I'm taking the swing at the Bristlemouth apps and how to use it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and we'll just jump right in here. I've got a few announcements at the top. I'm going to bore you guys with a quick screen share here. Fire up the sky. So as mentioned before, the agenda for today is pretty packed, but hopefully we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. We've got quick notes on ecosystem expansion. If you haven't heard already, I'm sure most of the folks have. We'll dive into a few document updates. These have been kind of flying under the radar, so I'm excited to give these a little airtime. I'm going to invite everybody to BristleCon this year once again. Pass it on to Uma for giving us a quick rundown on her work at the multi-parameter sonde using SDI-12. And then we'll finish off the presentation with some core development and accessibility with Zach. Like I said, leave some time for Q&A at the end. If you are signed up on any mailing list so far or otherwise, you've been hit with this a bunch, but I do not want anybody to miss this because it's really, really exciting. The context here is Sofar has added, or two third-party companies has added hardware to the Sofar and Bristlemouth ecosystem, meaning that now we will, or very, very shortly, we will have two new plug-and-play sensors. One is a dissolved oxygen sensor from PME, and the other is a hydrophone with edge processing from AOS. This, on the left here, you can kind of see the Sofar ecosystem. These are things that folks can plug into the smart mooring, but for Bristlemouth users across the board, this has added capabilities to any of the platforms you're developing or any of the systems you're hoping to build. I'm not going to waste any time talking about them because on the right, you can scan that QR code and there's like an entire webinar dedicated just to this with presentations from both those companies. But I do want to say the reasons why I want to spend some time just mentioning it here is for me, this is a huge win. This represents two established companies that have seen decades of ocean tech come and go, and they've decided, Bristlemouth is worth joining. And so that makes us feel really, really good about what we're doing. It makes us feel very validated about the approach that we have. And it's a really big step going from one manufacturer to three manufacturers, large manufacturers, medium-sized, depending on how you look at it, but is a much larger step than going from two to many. So really happy to welcome them in. Please, please, please check out that webinar. If you have anybody in your network that needs those capabilities, reach out. I'm sure they'd be happy to tell you what they're all about. The next thing I want to do, these doc updates were kind of flying under the radar a bit because we had been making a lot of noise about the ecosystem expansion, but we've updated by popular request and by necessity, we've updated all the dev kit guides to include instructions for Linux users that are using the Debian or Ubuntu distributions. This is a huge step. It wasn't that much different than the Mac instructions we had going on, but there were a few gotchas that we kind of worked through. If you're using other distributions of Linux, essentially you'll just be doing the package management differently, and then everything else going forward is the same. All right, a lot of folks are like, hey, what about me? I have a Windows machine. Actually, Victor and the team have been working on that. There's some progress there. We haven't documented it. The best way I've personally found to do that is put a Linux boot partition onto a Windows machine, because I've run into so many problems with WSL, virtual machine, all these things. There's like some gotchas. If you're a power user, you probably can work through those. Somebody like me who really struggles with this stuff, I had to go with the boot partition just so every time I reset my computer, I get to choose, select Linux, and it's easy sailing from there. We have also published the RS-45 integration guide. This lives right alongside the RS-232 integration guide, giving you an added capability to your dev kit. It pretty much walks you through the same steps. It's pretty straightforward. You can download the examples, start from there, and that should give folks that are pulling in other sensors that use the 485 integration, like the RX Live fish tracker that we'll talk about probably at the next webinar. Devices like that should be easy to integrate now, and you'll have a good starting place. You can see all this at bristlemouth.org/documentation. The last thing, if you're on our mailing list, this is the 100th time you've heard about this, but we are also really, really excited about BristleCon. It's January. This is our developer convention and kind of community celebration. Day one's all going to be keynotes and presentations and community presentations, lightning talks. I think there's going to be a few elevator pitches. We'll have a happy hour with a sea shanty sing-along. That is not a joke. There will also probably be some sort of boat race or competition again. So if you have your honor to defend or you want to become the new champion, please make the time to come up and visit us. Day two, there's some of the lovely people on the panel here. Matthew, Victor, Zach, and Uma, and the whole team, including mechanical engineers, software developers, the whole gamut of clever folks will be here to help you with your projects. So bring your projects in, get some one-on-one. We wanted to call it a hackathon, but that kind of assumes that it's like throwaway stuff that everyone, you start a project, at 8 in the morning, and then by 8 at night, you whatever it is you got. And this is very different than, obviously, if that's what you want to do, please come do some hacking with us. But what we really want to do is get you to bring your project, the thing that you're stuck on or you're passionate about, or maybe you haven't gotten started yet and you're like, oh man, I kind of love, the idea of getting started, but it's really hard. This is a great opportunity to get some real help and a shot in the arm with everything. And we'll hopefully, be able to make it worth your while to get out here. Please scan the QR code in the bottom right there. That'll get you logged in. And if you have any questions, let me know. Tell your friends. With that, announcements over. I'm going to pass it over to Uma to tell us a little bit about the multi-parameter sonde, and then on to Zachary. And hopefully we can get through this quick and leave some time at the end for Q&A.
That's good.
Uma, did you want me to drive slides, or did you want to, by the way?
Did you drive the slides? Thank you.
Yes, I can do that. Let me put that back up.
Okay, so as the slide says, I'm trying to introduce a new sensor into the Bristlemouth ecosystem using the Bristlemouth development kit. And we're using a multi-parameter sonde. Could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Like the objective says, yes. So we have SEI terminal blocks on the Bristlemouth development kit, and it was time to start putting that to a test and see if our hardware can handle it, our Bristlemouth code can handle it. So the outcomes of my effort in this project is to get like an example application out based on an off-the-shelf SDI12 sensor. Having a blog post out there basically documenting everything I'm able to find and mistakes I made, or just discovering it along the way, so that I know other people out there who are trying to use the sensor, trying to explore SDI12 will probably relate to it in some fashion. And once I can confirm that everything's working, get an SDI 12 integration guide out there. Yeah, that's what I plan to do on this project. Next slide, please. So this is our hardware. That's the EXO3 multi-parameter sonde from YSI. And this is something you might be familiar with. This is the Bristlemouth development kit. These are all the terminal blocks at the back. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the orange board, there are some SDI 12 lines, 2 ground pins, basically a few pinouts and all of that. We have to configure it to be an SDI 12. So we have some jumpers on the other side of the board. And we got to hook them up. And that's where the fun begins. Next slide, please. The fun part is now, what is SDI 12? What is this protocol? What are the requirements of it? What are the settings? So trying to read all of that and trying to discover, what's the right way to set it up to get some frames in and out of the sensor. So the specs of SDI 12 says you need 1200 baud rate, invert the data line, 7 bits, data width, and like 1 even parity bit. The other part is the timings are very crucial before you send or receive a command and data. Another fun part is RS-232, RS-485. When you're sending a command, it ends with next line, but SDI 12 commands end with like an exclamation point. So that was pretty interesting to discover, and something to keep in mind when you use that. Yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? So main goal, I guess milestone was to make sure we're getting 1 frame in and 1 frame out. What we're looking at here, the logic analyzer, is sending like a question mark as the command and trying to get the address, SDI 12 address of the sensor. And on the right side of the frame, you can see 0 CRLF. So when frames are returned from SDI 12, they end with CRLF. So with definitely some help from Victor, we were able to get to this point. And once we got here, we could communicate further and get data and get all the good stuff from the multi-parameter sonde. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I just listed all the things I've been using as a reference for this project: the spec sheet, the YSI data sheet, and a blogspot where I'm basically documenting all of this, and even the example, SDI 12 example on the Bristlemouth protocol repo. There are more steps, a lot of little details and big details also, but they're on the blog. So open to any questions anyone comes up with later, but it's on the forum. Hit me up. That's it from me. So I'll pass it on to Zach Crockett.
All right, thanks, Uma. That is really exciting to have that out there. Everybody can use all the protocols to talk to all the things. Share my screen, get it going there. Okay. Oh, gotta skip through. Boom, boom. There we go. Developer accessibility. So if you've been paying, Zach was saying, like, if you've been paying attention, you've seen many of these things a bunch of times. Over the course of 2024, it may have been obvious if you look at the core development topic in the forum. The arc of the year is pretty clear. We've been focusing a lot on developer accessibility. Back in May, Zach posted this sort of roadmap or wish list. Many of those things are shipped now. It's so great to have spent so much time like helping people get what they need out of the Bristlemouth firmware. And we talked about this major project, the protocol source code modularization, which is the main thing I'm going to sort of dive into today. Some of the other things that were helpful, we created the Circuit Python guide to bring in folks for whom that's much easier. And there was a ton of work internally to build this guide for managing spotter and bristlemouth versions, which is complicated. And that guide goes very deep, but now it's all written down, and everybody has at least the roadmap in front of them for managing those things. But I want to take a step back and talk about like why developer accessibility? Why has this been a big push for us? The future that we want, the thing that with Bristlemouth in general we are shooting for, is massively scaled ocean sensing applications. Right. This is what we as humanity need. No one company can do this alone. We have to gather this data to save species, to mitigate the impacts of climate change. But that's the end of a long road, and I like to work backwards. Like, okay, how do we get there? Well, at a certain point, when there is a standard that everyone uses, it just feels like it's the only choice, right? Like, oh, everybody uses Bristlemouth, I'm going to use Bristlemouth too. And sure, there is a stage between like many companies using it and everybody using it, where you have to set up steering committees and succession plans and open source governance. And we are actually working on those things. Huge shout out to Zach, actually has put a lot of work toward that long-term goal lately. But there is actually a critical threshold before that, before you can get to many companies building Bristlemouth things. To go from, okay, some people do it, to many companies do this, there are a couple of levers that really will drive the adoption and build this ecosystem. One is the sort of user customer sales pull. If you are a device manufacturer and your people are calling you up, your customers are calling you up and saying like, hey, I really love your stuff, but I would love it so much more if it worked with all this other Bristlemouth stuff I have. You all should really make a Bristlemouth thing. Like, that's one kind of pull. That's a strong incentive for any company to dive into this. That's one. We need to get there. But there's also the how easy is it? Like, if I am a device manufacturer and I'm like interested in getting into Bristlemouth, but it's just too hard, I'm never going to put in the R&D to do that. And that top circle on this slide, that's what we've been working on this year. We're trying to make it easier to unlock the power of this ecosystem, get more manufacturers, more companies building on Bristlemouth. So let's call it about 6 months ago, for this big source code modularization effort to make sure that integration is easier, where did we start? Well, just taking stock, FreeRTOS, LWIP, lightweight IP, and the AIDN 2111 were like hard-coded dependencies woven deeply into every aspect of the Bristlemouth firmware. There is no option to not use those things. The dev kit moat is the only realistic option for making a Bristlemouth device. If you like, there's no reference design other than the moat itself that you could go and build, your own thing or integrate it into your own hardware. And even if you have an idea for like adding some potential functionality to Bristlemouth, you can't like do this on your own for your own thing. You have to add it to this giant monolithic firmware repository. It's the only way to participate in the firmware ecosystem. And this is where we started, and this is what we wanted to change. This situation is rife for forks, like, oh, people as they build out, like, they try to get in the ecosystem, they're interested, they hear user pull, but they're like, okay, since we can't do it here, we're gonna make the Raspberry Pi version of Bristlemouth. And then over here is like the Python version of Bristlemouth. And over here is like this version of Bristlemouth for this other processor. And at that point, we've squandered the opportunity to unify the standard and really unlock this future of ocean sensing. So we've done a lot of work this year. My colleagues Victor and Matt are here on the call. It's primarily been the three of us, with help from various other folks along the way. But we have accomplished in the last 6 months or so a major refactor with no breaking changes to be released soon as version 0.13. And what we did was we took the essential Bristlemouth functionality from the repo, the thing that like makes a thing Bristlemouth, and pulled out those bits into a new code repository on GitHub called BM Core. It builds independent of any app and of any board, any hardware as a static library. It's strict C17, has more than 100 unit tests. There's a bunch of functionality that if you want to make a device and you want to know that you're conformant with Bristlemouth standard, like the tests are there to help you ensure that that's true. It can be incorporated not just into firmware for the moat, it could be incorporated into firmware for any hardware. And there is now a clear path to using any RTOS or operating system, any IP stack, and any single pair Ethernet chip. These things that before there was really only one option, the one option that we chose. But if I am a device manufacturer, maybe I work with a TI chip and I use Zephyr and it's like RTOS and IP stack. And like if I make those different choices, before I was locked out of contributing to Bristlemouth. Now, with BM Core, it's possible. There is a clear roadmap for making my things Bristlemouth. We also have some spectacular new documentation that is continuing to be edited and developed, but I'd be happy to show some of that in a minute. What is this? Let's talk about what this enables. This was a lot of work. It's a big change. As we home in on clear definitions of the public API for Bristlemouth firmware, we approach the point where we can actually release Bristlemouth version 1.0. That's something that people ask us for. We really want to get there. But what 1.0 means is now there's a clear contract of like these things will not break within this version, right? And we hope to accomplish that in 2025. We're getting close. Another thing that this enables, we chose strict C for the language and not C++. We did some work to remove C++ features and make it strict C because it gives us a clear path toward Python and Rust bindings, which may further broaden the appeal for developers, right? You can, all the same functionality that we've built, you can call into that from Python. You can call into that from Rust. It's not implemented yet, but the path is, the golden, the yellow brick road is laid out in front of us. Integrating Bristlemouth into existing hardware is now dramatically easier. Existing, I mean, like if I am a company that has my own hardware and has my own firmware and I want to make it Bristlemouth, that's now so much easier than it was. And even more of the sort of infrastructure that you need to make real products are there provided for you. And overall, we're just one step closer to massively scaled ocean sensing applications. There's more info coming soon. That PR pull request linked at the top is the one in BM protocol. It's like 84 some commits over months, and it's what we're about to merge to be the basis for all future firmware. I'll be sharing more about this at BristleCon, January 23rd and 24th. If this inspires you, if the direction that we're going is inspirational, please register. I will see you there, as will basically everybody on this call, all the panelists. And if you're considering running Bristlemouth on other hardware, one, definitely post in the forum, like let's talk about it, and come get a spot day 2 of BristleCon. I will be so excited to be there helping you solve those problems and sort of laying out, here's what you need to do, and we'll help you with these parts of it because it benefits the whole community. That is all. Open for questions now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Zach. Yeah, if you want to stop the screen share there, I'm going to do something incredibly dangerous, try to figure out how to use the webinars feature Q&A session. So if it goes up badly, apologize ahead of time. If you're on the call, go ahead and just indicate with a hand raise or type into the chat, and I will transfer you over to a speaking role here, or we can just address it in chat if you'd prefer. Gosh, I'm going to push this button. Okay. No open questions. All right. So I'll kind of ask one of my first questions. kind of get things loosened up a little bit. This one is for Uma. So when you connect the multi-parameter sonde, did you have to set it into like an always streaming mode, or is it like just naturally out of the box, just like transmitting data all the time and it's up to us just to grab it? Or was there some sort of like, okay, every time it turns on, I've got to send this like ASCII data, or oh, it's SDI12. I got to send this native SDI12 command, like turn sonde on.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I started off, I was also like, what is happening with the sensor? So what I discovered is, no, it's not like the moment it's powered, it's not going to send stuff out continuously. It's sleep mode, and you need to send like a wake command of sorts, wake. Well, it's a timing thing. Holding the data line at a certain level for some time will wake the sensor up, and then you send a command saying, hey, start measuring data. And then it takes its own sweet time because SDI12 is a little slower. 1200 baud rate is pretty slow, to be honest. So it takes a while and you have to keep asking it things and then it sends. Certain sensors have the continuous measurement thing available, but I don't think the multi-parameter sonde that I was using, the EXO3S, has that capability. But every sensor has in the manual what SDI nascent SDI12 commands it can work with. So
Awesome. And then I guess this is kind of also along the same lines. Have you done any of the data aggregation on the moat, or are you sending data just as it comes, like for your example, that you're working on that will hopefully publish for everybody? Or is it going right to telemetry, or are we using the spotter to collect and aggregate that data? What's kind of like your pipeline look like?
in the beginning, I just used only the mode to stream the data to my computer to just see what's happening. But yes, I have a spotter ebox in there and it's sending it via cellular. So we can, I think I'm right. Yeah, I have the spotter in there and getting some data. We are also logging to the SD card. And if you're connected to the console, then we're printing on the console. So I've got 3 different things. Yeah.
Nice. And then what sensors are on the sonde that you're testing with?
There's like 4 sensors and a central wiper. There's a turbidity, dissolved oxygen, there's like a condensation one, and I think a temperature one. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. I'm really excited for those capabilities because oftentimes we run into, conversations with Sofar customers or talking to other Bristlemouth folks. They're like, oh, I need temperature, pH, turbidity, conductivity, all, I've got a fluorometer so that I can look at, different chemical compounds, all this stuff. And, the answer sometimes is, oh, you need to put them all on a single multi-parameter sonde so that you can have all those co-located and timed and time stamped and calibrated all at the same time. And I think the XO3 seems like a pretty industry standard sensor or sonde that we're bringing in tons of capabilities, a lot of flexibility. So hopefully that checks the box or checks all of the boxes for a lot of folks. I'm not seeing any questions, which there is a possibility that I have used the question tool wrong. So I would say if you do have a question and we're not getting to you, just hit us up on the forum, or you can email me, Zach, zack@sofarocean.com. I wanted to, Zach Crockett, if you have any closing remarks. Otherwise, I think we'll probably end it here at 10:30, so kind of more or less on time. Inviting everyone to BristleCon once again. Hope to see you. The recording of this will be up on the forum, hopefully later today, maybe Monday at the latest. And back to business as usual, and we'll see you in the new year. Are there any closing remarks there, Mr. Crockett?
Oh, for me, maybe one quick thing. I'll just show people the some of the documentation. I was thinking part of what's great about this Bristlemouth accessibility effort is we have, so the firmware repository, the VM core repository, is open source here. And the API documentation is linked from that README. There is all kinds of great stuff here, reference diagrams, the API documentation for how you subscribe and publish data, all the fields you need. This is the kind of thing that people have asked for, but we have not had up until this point. And so that's going to be a big help. That was the only
Awesome.
thing I wanted to share.
Yeah, just Ron, thanks for coming, by the way. Just asked if we could also share the slides. I figured we'd probably it usually lives on the dash updates is where the link to the YouTube of the recording is. I'll also post it into a link in the forum, and beneath that I'll attach the slides so you can check those out and share those if needed. All right, guys. Well, have a wonderful rest of your week, wonderful Thursday, wonderful December, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.